So I'm really thrilled because it's our birthday. Stitching in the Moment is a year old, and the first kits I brought were this fabulous little sewing box. Actually I've got it open because I'm using it, but there you go, it's a little sewing box that you can get everything in. Even got a little pin cushion with Stitching in the Moment on, and there were the original needle case and the scissor keep, and we've got this beautiful thread organizer as well with that it's got some super little pearly buttons with it now, so that you can hang your skeins of thread on there as well. And I thought, as it's our birthday, I wanted to bring this kit back, so I know a lot of people haven't ever seen this, and I wanted to do something a little bit special. So what I've done is I've designed a different colourway, different flowers, but for the same original design. So you've got a choice then. You can either go with the new, which is based on autumnal colours, so you've got the oranges in there, the yellows, the golds. Choice is yours, but you'll get instructions for both of them. But one of the new flowers is this Crocosmia. I love Crocosmia, I've got lots in my garden, and I thought I'll just show you today how I've actually stitched this, and then one or two hints on putting these together. So let's begin. I'm going to start with green, and I'm going to start with the leaves on this Crocosmia, and these are reverse chain stitch, which is a stitch I've been using before. I'm just going to put a waist knot out the way so that it's going to be covered up, and it starts with a little straight stitch. I'm going to put it past that, so start on the tip of the leaf there and just do a straight stitch. Then you're going to come down a bit further into the leaf. You're going to pass your needle underneath that little straight stitch, and then you're going to go back down in the same hole that you started, and then a little bit further down. You're now going to pass your needle just underneath the chain stitch and back down again. So it just gives quite a lot of texture. Now I'm pulling it quite flat because Crocosmia leaves are strappy. They're not particularly chunky leaves, so I want quite a flat stitch there. And do a little bit more. It's a really quick stitch, this one. It's one of my new favourites because I just think it's great for stems, leaves, all sorts of different applications. And I'll do one more just because I'm enjoying myself, trying to get on the line there. And the idea with this waist knot on the surface is that at some point I've stitched over that thread at the back, and I'll just be able to cut that knot off the surface. So that's your reverse chain stitch, which you're going to do for your leaves. Let's just pop that out of the way. The next stitch is for the stems, so I just bring this in. I've got the little stems there that run through. So for my stems I'm going to use this sort of browny colour because they are different to the actual flowers themselves, and we'll start with a knot down there somewhere. And this particular stem, I think, starts about there, and it's just a simple back stitch. And that's just going to give us a basis to put some of the flowers on. I've been wanting to do a sort of autumn kit for a while, but I just looked around the garden and there's so many oranges and reds and hot colours in the garden at the moment. I thought this is just going to be absolutely perfect. And the fact that it actually uses, come out of the way, the same pattern. So originally on the design, this is for Lily of the Valley or for bluebells, depending on which colour scheme you got. So it was bluebells on the one that I just showed you. And for this, I am actually going to head to the top with this back stitch. So your stitches are probably going to be a little bit smaller and a whole lot neater than this. But I just want to get there and show you then where the flowers come into play on the stem here. going to cut this knot off now. I'm fairly confident that, in fact that's actually the originals, that I've stitched over the back of it. So there we go, let's get rid of that. And it's gone. So if you are starting and you've got no thread to wrap underneath, a waist knot's a really good place to begin. We're nearly there. A few more stitches. There we go. A couple more there. And 2 more, I think. Now, ordinarily, I would finish off by winding my thread, weaving it through at the back, but I'm not going to because I want it to get on. So I'm just going to put my thread out of the way there and go on now to the orange that I'm going to use for the flowers themselves. So again, let's sort of anchor that out of the way somewhere. So I'm going to start, now I've got the little marks here, so I'm just going to put a little straight stitch on that. Because if you look at the flowers in the garden, some of the buds aren't opened and then some of the flowers are. So they sort of work their way through. I'm just going to put a few straight stitches. I'll have that one as a straight stitch. And they do face different directions as well. So once they start flowering, the flowers do form into different directions. So I'd do a few straight stitches. This would be great in a variegated thread actually, wouldn't it? And then when the flowers are getting a little bit more open, what I do then is a little lazy daisy. So on this one, let's pop a little lazy daisy on there. Again, quite a long one rather than a fat lazy daisy. It's a bit longer there. Okay. So it's just a little bit different to the flower. And then you could carry on with some straight stitches, you could put more lazy daisies on there, and you know, by all means face them in different directions then as well. So perhaps this one's going to head down this way because that's the way the flowers are actually showing. So let's pop that on there. And you can see it's really coming together, isn't it? It's such a pretty flower, this one, and so simple and really quite quick. So it's really achievable. So that's how we're going to stitch that Crocosmia. Then what I wanted to just talk about was actually assembling this scissor keep. So on your kit, you'll find that you've got this line here, and that's your stitching line basically. So what I've found the easiest way to do, because it's quite curvy at heart, it's quite a difficult shape to turn if you want to turn it. I'm just going to pop that out of the way. So what I recommend is, if you're using a machine, a sewing machine, if you're doing it by hand, I'll talk about that in a moment, it doesn't matter, but if you're using a sewing machine, if you actually stitch over that stitching line but your bobbin thread, make it a different colour that you can see, because when you're placing that face down onto your backing fabric, if you haven't stitched that, you can't see that red line, which means you've got to cut it. But if you stitch it, not only have you got a place to follow, but it also acts as a bit of a stay stitch and prevents it fraying as much. So what you're going to do is you're going to lay it on your backing fabric, be a bit more frugal than that, Rosella. Lay it on your backing fabric, and then you're going to stitch around on your stitching line. I actually endeavour to get it just ever so slightly inside if I possibly can. I'm not saying I do very often, but I try to. Yes, I aim to. And then you're going to cut it out. Now, I've got one here that I've stitched onto my backing fabric, you can see, and I've cut it out, but then what I've also done is I've cut lots and lots and lots of notches. Maybe too many, but I like notches. The reason being is that when I'm going to turn it through, I've got more fabric on the outside than the inside, so I need to reduce it by cutting it away. So on the really curvy outside curves, I've put lots of notches. I've just put little slits actually on the inner curves. And remember that you need to leave a space for turning. And then whilst you've got it in this state, actually iron back, this is my opening here, iron back that opening, because then when you're stitching up the sides, because it's already been pressed open, it's easier to assemble. And you can see where you're heading to because you've got your stitching line there. And that means that you can turn it through. I may not be able to turn it all through. When you're turning it through, try and do any tugging with the backing fabric, not your embroidery, because you've just spent some time actually embroidering that and you don't want to pull it to pieces. So you're just going to turn it through. And because you've got those notches, it means then that you've got more chance of getting a really pretty curve on there. You might need something to turn it through. I actually use a paper crafting bone folder because it's not got a point on. I find that really useful. And at the bottom, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that with my hands, so you're going to have to press that through. But you're going to turn it through, spend some time sort of rolling it so that you can get more of a curve on that, and then press it. And you can see that that stitching line has gone. And then what you could do then is you could top stitch this, or you could pop a little blanket stitch over it. Because we pressed that, it means that that's going to fold in on those pressing lines. And again, you can press it again, but that'll get taken in when you stitch around the outside. But that's how you're going to get those smoother curves. That's one of the other designs, and the other new design is the little nasturtiums here. So we've got the 4 design, we've got the Crocosmia, we've got the nasturtiums, we've got the berries, and we've got then a lovely flower medley. I do hope you like them.